This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. For how long have I talked about Ron DeSantis not being ready for prime time? The fact that Donald Trump is a better retail politician than Ron DeSantis, it says a lot, because Donald Trump is not personable. He's not a guy who fits in and is just smooth with regular folks. It's a strain for him. But it appears as though Ron DeSantis is worse than even I initially thought. Video was released this weekend. Somebody put just a very brief clip of him walking into a cafe and trying to glad hand. I don't know if you've ever met a politician on the campaign trail, but it's a personable experience. They want to connect to the voter. When you meet somebody, like for instance, back when I was a Republican, I met Senator Dirk Kempthorne from Idaho when I was in the Marine Corps. And then years later, after I got out of the Marine Corps, I met him again, and he remembered my name. He remembered that I was in the Marine Corps and asked me how I was doing. I mean, that's a remarkable thing. Not totally normal, but you would expect some degree of that personability with a politician who's achieved what Ron DeSantis has achieved. He was a congressman from Florida, and now he's the governor and has aspirations to be president of the United States. And I'm going to play this clip, and I want you to pay attention. If you're just watching it, you're not really going to maybe catch the nuance here. But imagine if someone that you meet, you ask them their name, they tell you their name, and then rather than say, "Oh, hey, that's good to meet you," you say, "Okay." This clip is as though an alien did a Google search on how a politician should act, and then without any reference other than those words, tried to make it come to light. Watch the robotic Ron DeSantis.
How are you doing? Good, sir. Wow, look at this. You guys good. Hi, how are you guys? Good to see you. So what do you got? Go right over here?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Good deal.
Thank
wow.
you.
Crowded, huh? Good. Hey, how are you doing? It smells really good, I'll tell you that. So we'll do it, okay.
Hey, Ron.
How you doing? Good. What's your name?
I'm Tim Hampton.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's great to be up in New Hampshire.
How
are you guys doing?
Big announcement.
Stay tuned, man. Stay tuned. I can't do it.
What's your name? I'm Tim Anthem. Okay. What was that? It's just more evidence that he's not ready. He's not ready. And more people are going to see this as he gets out there on the trail, and more video like this comes out. Because listen, you're either personable or you're not. You're either comfortable with people or you're not. You can't be trained to not act like an idiot in this setting. It's something that you either have or you don't. And the other thing that really is that he's not ready for prime time is the fact that his team right now is trying to squelch things that he's written. For instance, he wrote a book. The New York or the Washington Post released this yesterday evening, that he wrote a book in 2011 or something, and it's kind of a spoof on Dreams from My Father, Obama's book. Anyway, I'll just read this headline. And I want to get into some of the pernicious ideas that he tried to pass off, because Ron DeSantis is an OG Tea Party guy, the racist movement against Barack Obama. And there's some real problematic stuff in this book that I'm going to read and then refute with the biography of John Adams. And I hope it'll disabuse a bunch of people of some of the ideas that Republicans constantly like to talk about. But let me read from this Washington Post headline here. Ron DeSantis' context-free history book vanished online, and we got a copy. There's a few paragraphs in between what I'm getting ready to read, but here we'll start here. Fortunately, the Washington Post purchased a digital copy last summer in anticipation that it may someday become more relevant. Now, with DeSantis expected to declare his bid for the presidency officially next week, that time has come. You see, they've taken this book out of circulation. Even digital copies you can't have. And the only hard copy that they could find is from this weird boutique bookseller for like $1,500 or $1,800 for the book, which is prohibitively expensive. That's why they don't want it out there. I'm going to continue with the Washington Post here. Dreams from Our Founding Fathers in title, cover, and content is essentially a troll of former President Barack Obama's 1995 memoir, Dreams from My Father, which recounted Obama's upbringing and young adulthood before he entered Harvard Law School. In his book, DeSantis, who has moved to stop history lessons in Florida that might make students uncomfortable and who attacked the AP African American Studies course, he said lacks historical value, dismisses slavery as a personal flaw of the Founding Fathers, irrelevant to the really important stuff, context-free, cherry-picked quotes from James Madison and Alexander Hamilton. This is something Republicans love to do. They act as though it was just the way it was, and George Washington, of course he owned hundreds of human beings. James Madison, of course he owned hundreds of human beings. They didn't know any better. It's just the way it was. Everybody owned slaves. And this is a pernicious lie that needs to die. There were many people who were contemporaries and even earlier than George Washington, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, who knew and preached that it was evil, that it was a sin, that it was immoral, that it was reprehensible, that it was a sinister practice. So you can't say that, well, just the way of life. Let me read a little bit from this. Slavery as a fact of life. Any historical book about the founders must acknowledge that many of them were enslavers, and DeSantis gets to it in the introduction with a whiff. Slavery, he writes, had been a fact of life throughout human history. It's a variation on the false argument that people didn't know it was wrong back then. In any case, the form of slavery practiced in the early republic, lifelong inherited race-based chattel slavery, was particularly severe and relatively new as far as human history goes. Some of the founding fathers, like Gouverneur Morris and Benjamin Franklin, opposed slavery anyway, DeSantis writes. True enough, though he hardly mentions either man again until the conclusion of the book, when he repeats that some of the founding fathers opposed slavery. It's as if Morris and Franklin have nothing to offer DeSantis by way of writing, philosophy, or first principles of his book title, read Limited Government, and are simply useful as permission slips to skip the yucky parts. DeSantis concludes his brief discussion of slavery with, quote, though it was not immediately abolished, DeSantis writes, slavery was doomed to fail in a nation whose constitution embodied such philosophical truths as liberty. Many of the founders believed in the inevitability of slavery's gradual end, but anyone today capable of typing cotton gin should know that isn't what happened. By the time of the Civil War, fully 8 decades after the Revolution, American slavery was bigger, crueler, more entrenched, and more profitable than ever. And to put a fine point, maybe a dull, blunt point with a hammer, is the writings of David McCullough, who's written several fantastic books. This is the biography of John Adams. If you don't have the time to put in to read a book of this heft, you can watch the HBO miniseries, which actually is quite good and follows this book really well. But I want to read this section of the book, this highlighted section here. This gets to what DeSantis is saying here, that it was just the way of life. It was the way everybody just knew it. That's the way it was. That's not true. I had to get my glasses here. I don't feel full. So here, but it was also New Englanders who had assailed slavery in the most vehement terms. As early as 1700, before Jefferson or anyone in Congress was born, Judge Samuel Sewall of Boston had declared in a tract called The Selling of Joseph that all men, as they are sons of Adam, have equal right unto liberty, and saw no justification, moral or economic, for making property of human beings. Slavery was evil. Of the slave trade, he wrote, quote, how horrible in the, excuse me, quote, how horrible is the uncleanness, immorality, if not murder, that ships are guilty of, that bring crowds of these miserable men and women. James Otis, in his famous speech on writs of assistance in 1761, had called for the immediate liberation of the slaves. Quote, the colonists of Massachusetts are by the law of nature free-born, as indeed all men are, white and black. Does it follow that it is right to enslave man because he is black? When Samuel Adams, and this is a story I tell all the time, when Samuel Adams and his wife were presented with a black slave girl, her name was Surrey, as a gift in 1765, they had immediately set her free. And Sam Adams said that there will be no slave in this house. So it is a lie. It is abhorrent. It is ahistorical to make the claim that it's just the way it was and no one knew any better. Is this a character we want running for president? Someone who's hiding from the things they've written? Someone who's so bad at retail politics they don't know how to act or interact with other human beings? I think the answer is clear. It is a no. What do you think, though? I'd love to know. You can call. Leave me a brief voicemail, 714-576-4054. Of course, you can email me, daily@dollemore.com. If you appreciate what I do and you want to help support my work, click the join button below, become a channel member. You can click the super thanks button, give an immediate donation, or you can go over to patreon.com/I-doubt-it. I doubt it podcast. Follow me on social media. I'm at Dollemore just about everywhere, and I'll see you next time. I love you guys. I appreciate you very much. Be genuine. Take care of one another.